Hey, hello everybody. It's Mika and I'm back here for another video. And today I want to talk about African descendants who are outside of Africa. So a couple days ago, I've shared a video of the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, apologizing to African descendants or diaspora for what our forefathers did. One of the reasons why we have a lot of African descendants all across the world, it is because of course, because of colonialism, but also some of our forefathers, they actually sold our people. They sold our people and our people were taken away from our continent and our countries. So of course, we are to blame as well for what has happened in the past, both for colonialists, for what they've done, as well as for our leaders, what they did in the past. And a lot of diaspora and African descendants have been wanting for so long time to at least have someone who can acknowledge the mistakes that were done in the past by our forefathers. Someone who will stand and apologize or acknowledge the mistake that have happened, that is true. We've done this to you guys and we are sorry. We know that our sorry is not going to change anything, but we acknowledge our mistakes and we apologize to you. So what Yoweri Museveni did not just apologize, but also he repented before God for what we did in the past. And, you know, I gotta be honest with you, that was one of the greatest sins that we committed, us as African, turning against each other and selling ourselves. We welcome the colonialists and we treated them better than we treat our own people. And we sold some of them. And because of that, so many Africans died during slavery. And you guys, you know stories. I don't have to go deep into that. But today, I am here to carry on what Yoweri Museveni said. And I'm here to talk about diaspora. And my message, I'm going to dedicate direct to African Union and African governments. We all know the reason why there's a lot of Africans all across the world. And one of the reasons is that Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, he had to apologize for it. Well, it would be a really nice gesture if other countries as well will follow that lead and apologize for what has happened. But beyond that, my call or our call to African Union and African governments is that it's time to remove the visa restrictions to diaspora. We have seen William Ruto of Kenya. He did the same exact thing because a lot of African descendants, man, they want to come back home. They desire to come back home. But then how are they going to come back home if visa is difficult? It's almost impossible for them to come back home. If it is permission to stay in the continent, it's difficult for them to stay home. How are we going to bring them back home when we cannot even provide the place for them to stay? Africa is their home. Africa is their land. And it is a time for African governments and African Union to figure out the way how to bring back our people. And one of the ways is to remove visa restriction for them. And another way is for each and every single country in Africa to leave a space for diaspora, to leave that a wide open door for diaspora to come back home. Forget about those people who do not even want to come back to Africa, but we have a lot of diaspora, a lot of African descendants who wants to come back home and settle, but they are scared and they're worried. What if they come here and they will be rejected? What if they come here and they're not going to be accepted by Africans? You guys are our people. I always say this, that Africa is one big family with 55 different children, 54 countries in Africa, and that one African descendants all across the world. And it is a time for you guys to come back home. And it is a time for us here in Africa to clear the space. Us here in Africa to prepare the house for you guys to return home. If you look at the budgets of African governments, some of the governments, a huge amount of money is coming from African diasporas. You guys have been developing our continents for a long time, have been developing our countries for a long time because of the money that you constantly send, because of the business that you do. We really like diaspora money. Surprising thing is that our governments, we really like diaspora money. We really like when they come and do business with us. But why we cannot open our doors completely and allowing them to come back home, to bring the skills, to bring back the skills, to bring back the expertise, to bring back the experience, so that we may transform the continent of Africa. Yes, I know this is not just going to come with positive sides. There might be some negative side, but I'm convinced enough that the positive sides of bringing our diaspora back home, back to where they belong, is much more than the negative. I know one of the reasons why there's a little bit of gap of African who are living in the continent and diaspora is that ignorance that most of us we have. And this goes to both sides. For Africans who are in the continent, they are ignorant about diaspora. Like when they come back home, they feel inferior. They feel like they're somewhere down there. They're not on the same level with you. And also diaspora as well, they feel like, we don't really understand the culture. How are we going to match? How are we going to plug into this completely different culture, new culture that I've never seen before? Because some of you have never been in the continent. And this is where government comes in. If we are not going to open the doors, if we're not going to just open up the doors and see what's going to happen, we'll never figure out what it will happen. It is the time for African Union to figure out the way how to open up the doors for diaspora. I know for countries like Ghana has been doing pretty good, but some other countries, the time to step up and to open up the doors for our people. Me personally, I have a testimony, personal testimony, that someone who really wanted so bad to move back to Africa, but until right now, he's struggling so much because of the expenses of just moving back here, starting with visa, starting with everything. So many different procedures, so many expenses that at the end of the day, he just decided to give up that, oh, you know what? I would rather just stay here than going there, risking my life, risking my money, even without knowing that am I going to settle there or am I going to be kicked out of Africa? Africa is your home. Africa is your place. And it's our call to African governments. Guys, it's the time to leave this space for our people. There's so many benefits Africa is going to get when you bring our children together back home in the continent. These are people that are going to transform our continent. These are people that they're going to bring a positive impact to our continent. These are people that their desire is to come back home and to reconnect with the culture and their people that they lost for so long time. Yoweri Museveni has shown the way to apologize. William Ruto have shown the way to remove visa restrictions. Now it's the time for the entire continent of Africa to open up the borders, to allow African descendants to move back home and to have a place to stay. Every single country in Africa must be willing to bring our people back home and to give them space to stay. We have enjoyed African descendants' money for a long time. Some of the countries have enjoyed even the support financially for so long time. When it comes to developing our continents, all the time these people are willing, because I once used to be diaspora for 9 years, almost 10 years. I did the same thing. I know what it means to miss home. I know what it means to just want to come back home so bad. I know what it means. And I know what it means being scared of what if I'm going back and I'm not going to be accepted? What if I go back and everything changed? I experience it right now. That some other people look at me differently because of the way I wear, because of the way that I talk. I see it all the time. But this is the impact of living outside for so long. We must open up our doors, our hearts and our hands for our people. And to Africans who are living in the continent, you have no reason to feel inferior. You are not different from anybody else. These guys are your people, are your brothers and sisters. You don't have to feel inferior because you have a lot of things that you know that they don't know. And they have a lot of things that they know that we don't know. So when they move back home, we need to be open to share. And to my brothers and sisters, diaspora, when you come back to the continent, do not expect to see heaven on earth when you come back home. You're going to face some challenges. Yes, you might not be accepted at some point, maybe because of the culture that you're bringing in, but you must be willing to learn. You must be willing to leave everything aside and to start from the beginning. If you've learned, if you've read, or if you've seen, or somebody told you anything about Africa, leave that aside and come here as a little child, someone who did not know anything about Africa, and willing to learn from the scratch. Open your mind, be open-minded to learn the language, to learn the culture, to learn how things are being run here in Africa. If you come, you bring your own concept, you bring your own ideas, and you want to change this culture, it's not going to happen. That's the fight that is happening right now between Africa and the Western countries. That's the thing that we're fighting about right now. So if you come back home where you belong, it's really, really, really important to humble yourself enough to learn this culture, to expose yourself to the local people. Don't just create these little clubs of diaspora in Africa. This is not going to help for you to understand the culture in the continent. It's not going to help you to plug in, to be connected with the people in the continent. It's not going to help you. In fact, it's just going to create division. That, okay, these are local Africans and these are diaspora. We cannot afford to have that. As we are fighting for one Africa, it's a time for you guys to come and to be open, to come to mix up with the local people. If there's any way that you can help and support, do it. If there's business that you're going to bring in the continent and hire some local people to work together towards a beautiful and developed Africa, come and do that. All of us, we have a part to play. All of us, we have a job to do. From the government, local Africans, African descendants. Every single one of us, we have a part to play, an African Union as well. Please, you gotta do something about this. You know, those African Union passport that a lot of leaders have, it's a time to those passports to be given to African diasporas. We have been fighting here for one passport for a while right now. It was already introduced in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, but it was supposed to be established in 2018. Until today, we don't have it. It is the time we can start with African diaspora, African descendants. We can start by giving it to them, that they have a freedom to go to any country in Africa, to choose any place in Africa, to come and to settle here. And our governments must create the police for our people, because these are our own people, and we are the one who did mistake to sell them from the beginning. It might not be me or you, but our ancestors have done it. So if we know what was the problem, it's the time to correct it. And this is how we do it. By giving African passport to these people, to our people, and also by changing our policies and allowing them to come back to the continent without visa restrictions. Giving them permanent residence here in Africa where they belong, here in Africa, home. A lot of them wants to move back home, and you have no idea how much Africa is going to be strong, because Africans' children, they are outside there everywhere, developing other economies, while our economy and our continent is bleeding. It's very simple. Let's open up the system. Let's welcome our people back home. Let's do everything we can for our people to settle in the continent and to transform this continent. I am convinced, and I have hope for Africa, that things can be changed if all of us were willing to leave everything behind, our pride, our knowledge, our whatever it is, but humble ourselves enough to sit down, to hold our hands and to work together towards a better Africa and a better future for our children. Africa is the best place for you to raise your children. It's the best place for you to grow your business. The best place for you to rest. It is the best place for you. Welcome back home. Welcome back home. The home, it must be open for you. And me, as a Swahili nation, as a Mika Chavala, we're going to dedicate ourselves to fight for this. So my request to all diaspora, those who have tried for so long to move back home, but due to different circumstances, it didn't happen. Maybe there's any difficulties. If you have any suggestions, if you have any opinions, if you have anything that you would like us to fight for you, please send to us in our emails. And the email is down here. Send to us there your suggestions. And what we're going to do is we're going to write a letter to African Union, and you're going to present it to them of suggestions of our people, things that have been going through, and what they want you guys to work out on. I know the thing of visa. I know the thing of passport. I know the thing of settlement, all those stuff, they will be included. But I want you guys as well to share your personal experience. Share with us. Please share in this email. Maybe I might come here and read these stories of what has happened to our people, our African people who tried to move back in the continent, but due to different circumstances, it didn't happen. Please share with us your stories, and I will come here to read those stories to the rest of Africa, to the rest of the world, to see, to understand what you guys are going through. It is the time to bring our people home, and we cannot just sit down and talk. We need to act. So please share your story, things you went through, things that you like to see change, and we're going to work toward that change. We're going to take that action. I'm going to take that action, and I'm going to dedicate myself to do that. It is the time to bring our people back home, and it's the time to unite this Africa, this continent. May God bless you. May God bless the continent of Africa. I love you guys.